The special session on supply and use and input-output tables. As mentioned today, we continue with the first session today. And you could go on with all your questions on the IT tool that was presented by IMF or questions on the other presentations. But before that, we still have 2 more presentations to go. I'm passing now the floor to Sanjeev Mahajan from ONS UK. Sanjeev will chair and moderate today's session, and he will be like one-man show, asking the questions, giving the answers, and everything. The floor is yours, Sanjeev.
All right. Good morning. Thank you very much, Tiamira. Good morning, everybody. I'm not sure about the one-man show. I'd rather say one-person show in this day and age of correctness, so to speak. But yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good day. I would actually use different languages, but I don't know how to say good morning in every language. But let's not go there. So hopefully you enjoyed yesterday. You learned things, some things you were already aware of, but most importantly, to make it sure it's 2 ways. As Tiamira said, we've got 2 more presentations, but if you have any questions from yesterday's presentations, so you had, in a sense, you could argue the ideal guidance of where I think we should be with supply and use tables and input-output tables. You had 2 countries' experiences from different evolution to where they are right now. And then you had an automated tool presentation to really help the front end of balancing supply and use tables. And I think that should hopefully give you a good flavor and a taste of things to come. But any questions from yesterday, please, we have a discussion later on. So we've now got 2 presentations continuing from yesterday. The first one is from Jose Terán, who's from the INIGI office in Mexico. And the second one is from Rafa Abu Ali from the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics. So I will now hand over to Jose to start the next presentation. And if you can share your screen, and off you go, Jose. But can I also ask both presenters, please keep to the 15-minute timeline? That'd be very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Jose. Yeah, and can you put it on, is it on full screen mode?
Can you see my full screen mode?
It looks like you have a full screen, but a smaller screen. But yes, go ahead. It's readable, and we can.
Yes, Jose, it was okay. You can share it again.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you very much. This is the Mexico's experience compilation on the supply and use tables. I'll try to attach to the 15 minutes. It's a little long presentation. So, well, this is the index we're going to meet in this moment. Just to say, we're going to talk about the importance of the SUT in Mexico. In Mexico, we use as the traditional methodology now established in the sense that, as Sanjeev said yesterday, it is the pillar for the base year change. There's a compilation, a full set of supply and use tables compiled every 5 years with economic censuses that are available only every 5 years. Let me tell you that the balance consists of 832 products of the economy classified into the NAICS codes. NAICS stand for the North American Industry Classification System that we share with United States and Canada, and it is also comparable with ISIC and CPC. Well, there are main features of the supply and use tables. We have up to now the base years 2003, 2008, 2013, and the next release for August of the 2023 is the base year 2018. We use the now traditional system of national accounts 2008, the Eurostat manual of supply and use tables, and also the new one with some difference in terms of the process. The difference is that we have more implemented more the Eurostat manual of supply and use tables than the new handbook. Sources. I'll speak from information sources a little bit more in a moment. The frequency, as I said, this is a 5 years basis. It's a quinquennial full set of supply and use tables, in the sense that we have a lot of information every 5 years, and not in the annual updates that are collected from year to year, and also in the short-term series. Well, the last release of the base year was on October 2017. The coverage, the published coverage is 4-digit label snakes, that is 262 products and industries. Well, just to brief, there's the supply and use tables. It has the recommendations, not all of them in the supply and use tables, just the ones that are to be implemented in the supply and use tables. We don't have the only two issues, only two subjects of the recommendations from the SNA 2008. That is the treatment of multinational enterprises, and the other one is the informal activities. With the exception of we measure the labor, income, and production of prostitution as an illegal activity. That's the only one we can measure and track in a time series. Data sources, as I said, the economic census at the right side. Let me just do it in a small. The economic census, population census, to track it derives into another measures, like the population that is employed in the 10 years basis. Population census. We also use, let me tell you that economic census consists of 4.6 million establishments. That's the size of the economy in Mexico. Is most of them are a small establishment, but it's a large and diverse economy. The establishment, most representatives produce accounts for 89% of the GDP. So the most important ones are the large ones, the large establishments, the large enterprises, that is to say, because there's also a lot of corporates that collect that unite several establishments into a single corporation. The second source of information is the household survey, like the labor survey, that is the National Occupation and Employment Survey. the household income and expenditure survey, and also for tracking the economy in the short term and annual basis are the establishment surveys for the economic realm. The other part of the economy that is, let me tell you, that is a full census in an every year basis are the administrative records. It covers public finances, industries like electricity, agriculture, financial system, education, balance of payment information, and not less important, big enterprises like telecommunications enterprises, automotive enterprises. All of them are arranged in the NAICS classification. As I said, NAICS stands for the System of Classification of North America that we share with Canada and United States. Okay. Compilation. We are further beyond the traditional compilation of production for market, non-market, and final uses. We also split the economy into formal, informal, processing, and handicraft industry. For the balancing process, one of the things that we traditionally do since 2003 is collect physical balances. There's a small picture. I'll do a bigger image just to show that physical balances show average prices, research and analysis, homologation of units of measurement, transformation coefficients. This is the beginning of the compilation of supply and use tables in terms of physical units. It is a version before the balance and after balance. So physical balance are combining the balancing process of monetary supply and use tables. In 2013, for example, there are around 200 physical balances combining the compilation of supply and use tables. And this is for example, from this one, a segment, the first segment of supply, that is the domestic economy, the imports in the supply, the uses in the intermediate demand. As you see, there's, let me show that we can see the unit of measure, quantity, and values. So we can derive average prices to see the comparison between supply and uses in an homogeneous price measuring. Also, we given this information that is derived from economic censuses and administrative records available in an annual basis, it's a full set of administrative records, and we can make this kind of calculations only for the base years, and we just extrapolate in a fixed basis. Just we still use fixed base year to extrapolate, to track the economy in a short-term and annual basis. As I said, this is the intermediate demand. It looks smaller, and finally the final demand. Very important in the compilation are the external trade statistics that comes from the administrative records related to external trade statistics. The balancing process, that is traditional. Given this information, the relevant point in this case is that we usually do a compilation of physical basic prices and purchases prices at the same time for the base year, and also in the case of the annual series, the extrapolation is being done by using volume indexes and value indexes. So we use implicit prices only to show the difference between value changes and quantity changes. Okay, the balancing process consists of an iterative technical economic analysis and adjustment by type of economic activity. We use the product flow method. We balance the supply and use, and we end up with a goods and service balance. The balancing process takes into account the monetary and physical flows, as I just said, by row, and also by, the employment observed in labor, supplied by the labor survey and demanded in the production account sources. So we stress all the information in the, well, we set up. It's more like a setting up the information and compare. It's a comparison of the sources of information. So in this case, the supply and use tables are a very good device, a very good tool to collect a balance, a full set of balances for supply and uses. For example, just to say a little more of this, we set up the information in a unbalanced SUT. It includes layers like processing formula and informal, as I said. Take initial balance of products in physical and monetary units. Compare administrative records of imports and exports by product against production accounts. Check for inconsistencies and compare employment statistics in production accounts from economic census and administrative records versus labor and occupation national survey, that is the labor survey. Define final levels of production. It must cover at least exports and inner domestic market uses. Also special cases as informal market. Distribute final valuations. The taxes must match tax government accrual figures. In the case of the base year, we use the information from several years after the year. So we receive the information finally accrued in taxes.
Jose, apologies to stop you in your flow. 2 more minutes. Thanks.
Okay. This is an example of balancing. We have production, imports, exports of cigarettes, and the one that is typically underrated, it's consumption of households. And so supply in this case defines the consumption of cigarettes. There are other examples like FISIM. How do we do? Just to mention, FISIM are compiled also with a lot of information in the balance in a 5 years basis. Topics like government expenditures, non-included elsewhere, like that is the purchases made by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which disaggregate into a set of goods and that identifies the origin abroad, and consequently it is computed as an important origin. That it goes for the balance of services. And also, well, finally, the input-output tables. We use a product for the product by product matrix. We use a hybrid model. We assume. Sorry, there's noise. So okay. We review the consistency of the technology of uses in the production account for every activity. And secondary production is typically moved from main main production to secondary cost production, and this is made by hand. This is a manual process. We are an input-output division. We have an input-output division that do this calculation. Also, we publish the industry by industry, the fixed product sales structure assumption, the D model in the literature, and that's it. I'll finish with this slide. Thank you very much.
Jose, thank you very much for that. If you can stop sharing your screen, that's excellent. There's some really good stuff covered. I'll pick up on that in a moment or two. After Rafa, over to yourself. Can you share your screen?
Yeah.
And we have it. And if you can put it into full screen mode. Then,
yeah.
And then you're there. That's excellent. Thank you very much. Off you go.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rafi. I'm from Palestinian Bureau of Statistics. So now today I will present supply and use table in case of Palestine. Mainly, I will focus in supply and use table 2017, which is the latest supply that we issued. Firstly, will I give you background for SUT in Palestine. The first SUT in Palestine was for 1997, which is the first SUT in Palestine. This is performed because we have the first census in Palestine after the self-power empowerment in Palestine. So the second one, it was in 2004 for SUT, which is combined for both regions, West Bank and Gaza. As we know, if you don't know the situation in Palestine, there's two regions. There is West Bank and Gaza, which is separated from each other. So we introduced two supply, one for West Bank and second one for Gaza. Then we added to each other and bring to Palestine's SUT. So in 2004, it was establishment survey, which is support to produce supply and use table. Also in 1997 and 2004, we used a Excel sheet as a software to complying supply and use table. So the latest supply and use table was in 2017, which is complied also by region for West Bank and Gaza. And we use a new software for us, which is RETIS. It is from NSC in France, and there are some countries use this software. So I will go to the framework of our complying supply and use table for 2017. So we use generic statistical business production model, which is the model. This is a framework. Identify the object and our needs to final dissemination. So it's helped us to modernize the statistical production process and integrate the data to metadata standards to template for documentation and therefore for quality assessment. So the first phases, I combined the three phases in one phases: specify needs, design, and build. This is phases will include some of tasks like identify our user who would use our supply and use table, to decide how to decide the size of supply and use table. Then we conduct several meetings with partners, with the data user and data providers to know what data availability to our work. Then we organize a brainstorming with advisory committee, which is from academic and from expert in Palestinian economy, which is very important because we want to determine how much will product we use, how much will go further to detail in industries and the products. Then we collect data to build a new the data set for complying SUT. Then the third phases or a process it's include the data cleaning and manipulating. So we set supply and use table and put the data set in ERTIS program, and we produced the unbalanced SUT. This is in third phases. Then we go to analyze this result, the initial result. After this, after we solve the balancing problem and issue of discrepancies, we go to dissemination and publish and documentation for our SUT. So I will talk about dimensions and classification for SUT 2017. It's based on availability of data and quality sources also, and need for user visibility and for researcher and visibility studies. We have a relationship between some ministries and some central of studies, and we ask them what the main data you want to show supply and use. So for some products, it's possible to identify whether these used as intermediate consumption or final consumption. I will show you in balancing section, because there's we faced a challenging to distinguishing for specific product to intermediate and final consumption. Then the supply and use table 2017 include 87 product with 54 industries. We used the classification Isaac revision 4, and for products we use CBS CBC version 2.1. So as you know, the constructing of supply and use table, it's divided two side, supply side and use side. So for the first, the supply table, it's divided to domestic production matrix and the valuation vectors. Also there is imports, which is add to supply side. I mentioned here in the slide the sources of data. For domestic production, we use the economic survey, administrative record, also agricultural statistic, Ministry of Finance data, also government data, expenditure and consumption survey for household production, for sure. The valuation vectors like trade and transport margins, we use the economic surveys for wholesaler and retailer and transport companies. There is in survey there is a question about the trade margin, about the transport margin. We used other methods for some products. We use other methods to estimate the trade margin and the transport margin. Taxes and subsidies. This is from Minister of Finance, data from Minister of Finance to estimate import duties and VAT. So the other side is use table, the use table, intermediate consumption. Also, there is a corresponding between sources from supply side and use side. So intermediate consumption, we use economic survey, government, administrative, budget data of UNORWA and NIBISH. Gross fixed capital. This is the second part of use table. We used the same sources that I mentioned. Also the third part, change inventory, final consumption. We use for the household, for the government, for the non-institution serving household. So I'm going to balancing supply and use table, and I will show you some of example to balance the balancing process that we did. So as we know, the balancing is the very crucial point to investigation consistency of data, because we have different sources and different classification and different data sources. So the balancing must follow the entity, the familiar entity and the entity that output plus import plus the valuation, as we said, should equal intermediate consumption, final consumption, gross capital formation, and export. Okay, then we go to check our data sources about we assessment the data quality for our data sources. Then we analyze a problem in detail. So to determine the variables more likely to causing imbalances, we put administrative record as a solid data, because it's published and it's very official. It's so official. So we consider it as a solid data. On another side, we have imports and annual economic survey. It's less solid than household final consumption data. As we know, imports, it's very difficult here to capture the imports and also trade, imports and export. It's very difficult to capture it because the political situation that we faced here in Palestine, there is no control for Palestinian Authority borders, so we cannot capture every transaction between Palestine and other worlds, especially Israel economy. So household final consumption is solid more than annual economic survey, because mostly of citizens here more tendency to declare our consumption more than our output or our income or their income. So I will go to the largest discrepancies that we faced in supply and use table. So the first one, the biggest or the largest discrepancies in livestock product and the meat product, which is related to each other. So we have the supply exceed use side exceed by 335,000 the supply more than use. So we go to other related products, which is meat product. The meat product, it will use the livestock as intermediate consumption to produce the final product of meat. So what we have in news side in livestock, intermediate consumption is not matched with the output of livestock. So we checked our data sources. Our data sources for supply or for output of livestock from agriculture data, and the intermediate consumption for use livestock from economic survey. I checked the output for livestock. Firstly, I remove the price effect, return to quantity, which is I recommend to use balancing quantity. If you face the problem, very large discrepancies, if you can remove or eliminate the prices effect, you can balance by quantity. So we balance it by quantity, use how much of heads go to slaughtering house. So we compared between output of livestock and the intermediate consumption that livestock go to slaughtering house. Slaughtering house will produce meat product as a final product. We found that slaughtering house was classified as a trade activity, but we know in the latest version of Isaac for the slaughtering house, it is industrial activity. So after we check our resources and balancing supply and use for two products, we add to intermediate consumption of livestock. Livestock will go to intermediate consumption for meat product. So when go to meat product, also we found also here there is a high discrepancy. Use it's more than supply. That's mean that there is underestimate of output for meat production, which will support our view that there is a problem in intermediate consumption of livestock. So we add to output of meat product because, as I mentioned, there is a misleading or misunderstanding for classification for slaughtering houses, because we found that the classification was for considered as a trade activity, which is actually it's an industry activity.
Rafa,
Yeah.
okay, you got 1 minute.
Yes. This is the last largest discrepancy that we faced. It's milk and dairy products. Milk and dairy products. Here we faced the problem that there we have too much or not overestimated. We have too high of output of raw milk, and we have less intermediate consumption for raw materials. So we after we asked some expert and we analyzed this problem, we found there is many household enterprise that used raw materials to produce dairy product. So we found this discrepancy, and we eliminate this discrepancy by adding intermediate consumption for milk, for raw milk, and for intermediate consumption and final consumption for dairy product. Also, we add in supply for dairy product because as I mentioned, there is many of household enterprise in Palestine. They produced dairy products. So complying SUT challenges that we faced, lack detailed data and lack human resources, financial constraint. General recommendation, we recommend to use GCBBM approach. Describe, defines your process to complying SUT. Strength and correlation between statistical office and related of ministry that will use your data and provider data. So enhance your relationship with the data sources, setting up advisory committee which is will support you to complying SUT. Okay. Finally, I will talk about IT requirement. We used ERITIS, and we recommend to use ERITIS because ERITIS it's a friendly use, and you can track any product, any industry in very easy way. Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Rafa. It's very useful indeed. So firstly, to the audience attendees, if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat facility, or if you want, please raise your hand and I'll come to you. So what I would pick up as some key points without having to repeat lots of stuff that we covered yesterday. Firstly, if I look at Jose's presentation, I think it's really important to note that the Mexico experience is that they've brought both the supply and use tables and the input-output tables together in the compilation, as well as current prices and in volume terms. So that's the first observation. That's really important. Second one, I think, is in a way, it wasn't really emphasized, but if you notice, I think Jose mentioned 822 products. Now, yes, that is a data hungry situation. It is a scenario where having lots of products, like I said yesterday, makes life a lot easier in many ways for balancing and for deflation. But on the other hand, there is costs of resources and finance involved in getting that sort of information. So there's a balance to be struck. It's not something that everyone can do. But the benefit of having so many products is really important. Also to note, there's a really big focus for the Mexican experience on the 5-yearly census, getting lots of information on the 5-yearly basis. But I'll come back to that in a moment. And then I think, as I would say, in the data sources, over the last 30 years, things have been swinging from one extreme to the other, but the pendulum right now is a greater emphasis on the use of administrative data. And administrative data tends to be much more comprehensive, but probably less timely. Again, nothing's perfect. One question I will leave for Jose to take forward is, can you provide a bit more information on how they make the joins between the 5-yearly comprehensive picture and then the annual picture? And are there any plans to get more information annually? The reason why I say that is the world economy, the national economies, the subnational economies are changing rapidly through globalization, technology change, people movement, etc. And because this is happening so quickly, structural change takes place much more quickly and often than the 5-yearly benchmark will capture. So the question to Jose is, how do you do the 5-yearly to the annual join? And are there any plans for more annual information? Moving to Rafa, again, another nice presentation, but coming from a different perspective. I did like the 2017 picture. Question for you is, have you got any plans for a more recent year? I really like the way you focus on the GSBPM as a sequence of compilation. And I would advise that for people who are considering producing supply and use tables, or in the earlier sort of strategy planning vintage scenarios, or even if you're re-engineering and restructuring to make more automation, etc. The GSBPM is a very good tool to follow. I really like the balancing example, the way Rafa described how they looked into the imbalance, how they investigated it, how they articulated their findings, and then the knock-on effects of putting in adjustments. And finally, I did like the fact that the West Bank and Gaza are two different areas, and you brought that together. In terms of regional supply and use tables and regional accounts, a lot of countries do this top down, but some countries do it bottom up. And my recommendation is bottom up because you're going to get much better quality. So I've got a question for Rafa on that context of, can you briefly describe the challenges of how you brought the two together? Very briefly, because obviously we only got minutes, not hours. But did you have dialogue with the West Bank and the Gaza people separately to make sure they worked at the same number of industries, the products? How did you invest to get what you wanted? And what hurdles did you have to overcome? So, and finally for Rafa, I've put in the chat a little bit about the Eritis, but if you can add another minute about how you use Eritis and its facilities and its benefits, because I think some at least one user or in the audience has asked for some more detail. So firstly, I'll hand over to Jose.
Thank you very much. How do we connect 5 years estimates to annual estimates? Well, there's only track we track by using so in the case of economic private activities, that is the biggest source of independent and not covered by the administrative records. We use economic surveys in the monthly and annual basis, and that's the way we extrapolate value and volume indexes. That's because of the cost of economic censuses that is not collected in an annual or biannual basis. So the positive and the negative. The positive that I see is that we do a review in, for example, we publish the preliminary estimates and the definitive estimate for a year, for a specific year. And there's also revision of series, of time series. So there's feedback in the time series that allows to change, in some cases, review the estimates for as long as the entire series. For example, we have recently collected the population census 2020. We found that we have a lower size of the population and a lower size of economic population in working. So the working population is lower, so the a little lower only, and this has made a feedback in the employment matrix, and so on. That's the way we try to feedback in time as soon as possible. The other in the maybe in the next base year we're going to do another try to improve the timely estimates for the base year. And Francisco is maybe trying to give another.
I'll bring in enthusiastic.
Yeah,
in a few minutes.
Or correcting my ideas.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got one more question from you from the audience, but if you can, within 1 minute, briefly describe any particular features of how you go about compiling the imports matrix. But please, 1 minute, because I want to go to Rafa afterwards. Thanks. Jose, the imports use matrix.
Imports matrix, we collect the administrative record, and we have a couple of adjustments. The first one is to just identify the purchases matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the imports are related to industries straight ahead. For example, the automotive industry, but many of the inputs are not necessarily used as an input in the production. So we have to analyze the production account and see how many purchases are for as an input and some others as for repair. But we have to describe as devices to repair or fix cars, not for inputs as an automotive production account. And in the beginning we have a distribution between imports for intermediates, final consumption, and gross fixed capital. That's to begin with. Then the classification from harmonized system to NAICS, and then the first description that I made for purchases, and then the adjustment for uses as intermediates. And that's the way we do in an annual basis, because we have the administrative record in a monthly and annual basis.
Okay,
and that's it. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jose. I will come back to you, Francisco, but I want to give the floor to Rafa. If you want to address the issues
Yes.
around.
Yes, thank you.
That'd be great.
Firstly, we planning to complying supply and table for 2023. So we planning to complying SUT every 5 years. Also, because we have lack in human resources here, we cannot complying suit annually, but I recommend if you can complying SUT annually, do it, but you can use every five year as a benchmark SUT. This is for the first question. Second question about West Bank and Gaza. Surely it's a very difficult situation here, because it's separated and governments by two authorities. But we have office in Gaza, we have office in Ramallah. We conduct economic surveys, and we conduct household expenditure surveys. But for the underground trades via tunnel, if you know, in Gaza, because Gaza it's under siege, so there is many products go to Gaza and through the tunnels and underground. So we faced this problem by depending on in expenditure surveys, which means we compare the amount of final consumption or household consumption with the production, and the gap between production between output and final consumption will come from imports that we under coverage. So also we use some technical like input output ratios, which is technique will make your data it's like make your data suitable for the real for the real worlds. يعني I think this is my point of me how the correlation between West Bank and Gaza.
And the final question was, could you provide a little bit more, obviously knowing there's limited time, on how you use and the benefits of using ERITIS?
Benefits of using ERITIS. By using ERITIS, you can track. Firstly, the ERITIS is a data set. You can put your data sets in one software. You can build one data set for your data to complying SUT. This is the first thing, and there's many benefits, like you can track any products or any industry. If you want to know any products where it goes, final consumption as a final consumption or as an intermediate consumption, you can easily go to this product, click, and it will show you where is how much of go to final consumption, how much output, and the sources of output, if it is non-market output or non-market price output or market prices. Okay. So you can know many things, data sources and everything by using ERITIS.
That's great, Rafa. Thank you. I mean, I know for some people you may not get all the information you want, but I think it's good to get a flavor of how Jose and Rafa describe things. And if you do want more information, by all means, contact the relevant individuals or Tiamira at the UNECE or myself. But I've got a comment, Rafa, that they liked your investigation in how you fix the imbalances, which is reassuring from other people who observe and understand that. But I've got one quick question for both Rafa and yourself, Jose, with a yes or a no answer in the spirit of time. So I'm going to word the question along these lines. You already have GDP, it exists and it's been published. You produce your supply news tables and you come up with a different estimate for GDP. Do you publish and revise the GDP going back in time? So Jose, yes or no?
Okay, Jose.
No.
No. Oh, interesting. Rafa, yes or no?
Actually, it's happened to us. Yeah, we published the revised GDP.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. We depend on SUT.
Okay, excellent. I deliberately asked these questions in this way, and it's actually really nice. There's a yes and a no, not but two yeses or two nos, to give the attendees. Again, that theme. Different countries do different things. However, I would advocate GDP comes out the supply news tables, and if you need to revise past estimates of GDP, please do so. But that's just me coming from a different, unique position. Yes. So I am 1 minute over, but I know Francisco's been waiting patiently. Francisco, you have 1 minute, please. Come in.
Thank you very much. Just to say something in relation with the annual, of course, the adjustment that we have GDPs annually, quarterly, because in the case of Mexico, we know that when we have our new benchmark year, or we have a lot of information, and it's only a trick to have supply and use tables annually and quarterly. And that means that the size is lower than when we get the economic census. And we have some rules specifically to every 5 years to change the base year. And that means that we have to revise the GDP and the historical data. And that for us is another point and very difficult task, because we have to look large series for the users. And the last one is the trick, and is another issue to track the informal sector. In the case of Mexico, 25% of the GDP comes from the informal activity. And that means another very layer from the view of the supply and use table, because we have to link the employment surveys, the national survey of income and expenditures from the households, and of course with the production. So with this view, my answer, and I have to correct to my colleague Jose, my answer is yes. We always try to track and to link the GDP coming from the supply and use table with the total of economy. Thank you very much, Sanjay. Thank you to all.
Francisco, that's great. Thank you very much. And also, Jose, don't worry. You can have a no. In national accounts, we're good at revisions. The no can become a yes. So you just
it becomes a yes. And I was rethinking the answer, and we have revisions for the level.
No worries. So in a sense, you do your benchmark, and that's when the benchmark revisions come in, not in the annuals, which makes sense, which is good practice. What I would advocate is annual supply and use tables and impact tables, like I said yesterday. However, I just want to conclude with one word that Francisco said, which is something I want the attendees to bear in mind. It's all very well myself saying you must be able to do annual supply and use tables in current prices with many products in volume terms, have a consistent time series, etc. I dream about these, and this is how it should be done, etc. However, the one word is difficult, is I just want to draw out. Obviously, I've talked about resources. Rafa said there's limited resources. Other countries have said limited skilled resources, limited data, etc. The word difficult is also a word I would throw into that pot. Right, so I'm now going to bring this session to a close. Thank you very much to Jose, Rafa, for the presentations and the questions and comments from the others.